happen, and we really appreciate them. Reader's Digest magazine used to have this ongoing, feature story called "The Most Unforgettable Character I've Met," and the most unforgettable character that I've met is Shmulik Zwass. I mean, Shmulik was an extraordinary human being, and I think that everyone that knew him, everyone that really got to know who he was and what he was their most unforgettable character as well. His niece Nurit posted on Facebook some words that really struck me. I think she captured in very few words, poetry captures, if it's well done, it captures the essence of what it's talking about, and I think she really did, as much as is possible, capture Shmulik's essence. She said, "My uncle Shmulik left us today. At 5 feet tall, he stood a giant of a man. Genius, eccentric, resourceful, resilient, helped all those around him, but above all else, incredibly kind. He was stubborn as a mule and lived life on his own terms, doing what he loved until the very end. He only wanted to live as long as he could contribute to this world. And did he ever? 2 months shy of 90, he still camped, boogie boarded, bicycled, skied, and the list goes on." And I really didn't have a real understanding. I knew, I have to tell you that I usually called him Sam, but Shmulik, Sam, whatever, he was one of my very favorite people. He whenever we had family gatherings, I always tried to make my seat be next to Sam. That was the first thing, the first maneuver was to get next to Sam. That was the...
after your wife.
After my wife, right. But the Shiva was really interesting because it brought out all of these stories from the neighbors and from congregants about things that Sam did for them. I mean, the first thing was that somebody came to get a key for the synagogue because Sam had one of the only keys to the synagogue. He was always the guy there that opened the doors and locked the thing up, and he was also their bookkeeper, and he generated their calendar. And one of the people on the board there was talking and saying that whenever they have meetings and they needed a volunteer to do something, he was one of the first people to volunteer. And this is the guy that's 2 weeks shy of 90. Okay, I'm haven't hit 70 yet, and I have this attitude like, well, I've put in my time, I've done my work. Obviously, Sam didn't have that attitude at all. He, in the neighborhood, there was this 16-year-old girl, Sophie, and she read a eulogy. It was very beautiful. It was very touching. She was Sam had been tutoring her for 3 or 4 years at that point, and she had a lot of trouble in math, and she became a straight A student in math. But it wasn't that he was just tutoring her. He would be he'd be schlepping her. She needed to go to piano practice, or she needed to go to soccer or whatever. And he did this for other neighborhood kids too. The only restriction was he had an invalid wife that required full-time care. So he would say, "Oh, well, sure, I'll take you to soccer, but I have to be back at noon to feed Rosa." And when Elisa would come up here, would fly up here, she would drive to Sam's place, park her car there. He would take her to the airport, and then when she came back, he'd pick her up, and so she wouldn't have to pay for the parking and go through all the hassle. And he did these kinds of things for so many people. He, at the same time, he was the epitome of kibbud av v'em. I mean, he was honoring one's mother and father. I have never seen anybody that came close to Sam. Sam called his parents every day, without fail. And if they had any issues at all, they needed anything, he would come over, he'd fix the car, if the TV broke, he'd fix the TV, if the refrigerator broke, he'd fix the refrigerator, he'd do anything, he would take care of it. It was like, he was just, he was amazing. And one of the other women at the Shloshim Sam also spoke, 6 or 7 languages fluently. And this woman was saying her father had been a Holocaust survivor, and somehow he had managed to make it through the camps with a journal. He had kept a journal. But he had done it in Yiddish, and he had done it and printed in very tiny print because I guess paper was hard to get and he had to hide it. And Sam spent countless hours translating this journal, and this took a period of a few years before it was all done. And then she just this year published a book about this journal of her father's from the Holocaust. And she said, without Sam, there would have been no possible way that this could have been done. And I've always, I've been there when he's been translating Polish for people, or translating Russian. One of the Sam had an amazingly great sense of humor too, which I hope I don't have enough about, but you're going to get to hear more about Sam in years to come. I could literally talk about Sam for hours, but I don't think you would appreciate it if I did that tonight. But anyway, he's in college, and it's their finals week, and he's meeting with some of his friends in a local tavern, and one of the friends, he sees that she's looking very forlorn, and he says, "What's wrong?" She says, "Well, I'm supposed to be taking my Russian final, but there's no way that there's no possible way that I'm going to be able to pass it." So he asked her, when is it and where is it and so on. She told him, and he went. And he went in and he took the test for her. As he was finished, he did it very quickly. As he's finishing the test, the instructor starts walking toward him. So he signed her first initial and her last name, and the instructor comes over and said, I don't remember you attending the lectures. And Sam did something, distracted him, and stuck the test in the middle of all the test papers. And then he said, I used to come late a lot, and I always sat in the back, and he said, "I'm sorry, I got to run." And he left. Anyway, when he went back to the tavern, and his friend was still there, and he said, "Congratulations, you just passed your Russian test." and she did. Another person at the Shiva that sort of stood out, there was this sort of middle-aged black guy amongst all of these very Jewish-looking people. So I walked up to him and introduced myself, and I started talking to him, and it turns out that he had worked with Sam at Hughes Aircraft. And he said Sam was his mentor, and that he owed everything to Sam, and Sam had just transformed his life. And he told me one story. He said, one time we went on a trip, we had a conference to go to in Seattle, Washington. And so he and Sam went there, and they had a break from the conference, and they had stopped at this place where there was a waterfall, a little creek and a waterfall, and it was very picturesque. And Sam says to this guy, "Go over there and climb up to the top of the waterfall, I'll take your picture." And I remember this guy's like at least 30 years younger than Sam at this point. And he looks at this and he says, I don't know, that looks pretty steep. Sam says, "Nah, it's nothing." He ducks underneath the guardrail, goes down the creek bank, jumps across a couple of stones in the creek to get to the other side, climbs up this rock wall face, gets to the top, and takes the picture. And then when he comes back down, he says, "See, it's nothing to it. Now you do it." That reminds me of another story about him. It's about 2 weeks ago, the same Nurit that posted this, had posted a video of him boogie boarding, riding a wave on the boogie board. And he comes in, and he gets up, and he walks over and he hands the boogie board to Nord, who's videoing it, and he says, "Now you do it." So, that was Sam. It was like he was irrepressible, and he got you involved in things. He had such a zest for life that you just couldn't help but to get excited about it with him. And Nurt's brother Guy posted just like a one line, a sentence, and I don't have the exact words, but the gist of it was, thank you, Shmulik, because without you, I wouldn't be here. And the reality is that his mother would not have survived Siberia. My wife would not have survived Siberia without Sam. Because Sam was like the original MacGyver. I mean, when he went, he was a teenager. He was a young teenager. By the way, one of the people sitting Shiva asked Sam once about Siberia, and she said, "What was it like going to Siberia?" And you have to realize this was they loaded all these people in cattle cars, and you had a bucket, that was your toilet, and nobody bathed, and you went thousands of miles to get to where you were going in Siberia. Sam said it was like camping. It was an adventure to him, and he had this, he said he in his journal, or in a conversation we had once in the kitchen, I don't remember which, but he talked about, it was amazing to be in a place in the world where no human being had ever stood before. It was very possible that in some of the places that he was in Siberia, that no human had ever been. And he got a love of nature from this experience that he conveyed also to my wife, because he took her when she was little. He used to take her on dates with him, but he also took her camping and he took her everywhere with him. And so she learned to love nature, as a result of her association with her brother, and that's another thing that made it possible for us to come together and be married. When Sam got to, how did he save them? Well, he got there and they saw right away that he had mechanical aptitudes. They put him in the garage, and they had a lot of trucks and cars, most of which didn't run, and the ones that did run were very iffy at times, and the ones that did run he had running like clocks really rapidly, and then he had several of the ones that didn't run, he suddenly had them running too. And so he got the attention of the mill manager very quickly. And Sam talked, in a conversation with this man, he said, "Listen," he said, "this is a very primitive setup you've got here." He says, "I can make this immensely more efficient, and I can do it with stuff you've got here. You don't need to go out and spend a lot of money. Just let me. I'll tell you I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Just let me do this. It'll be much better." And the manager by that time had been very impressed with him, so he said, "Sure, go ahead." And he did it, and the mill became exceedingly efficient. And suddenly they were exceeding their quotas. They were like the number one, mill in the area. So the word got out very quickly, and managers from other mills and factories came, and they came to Sam and they said, "Can you do this? Can you do this for our mill?" And Sam said, "Sure. You bring me a sack of potato, a sack of flour, some boots for my father, a warm coat for my sister. Then I'll do it." And that's how he fed and clothed his family and got them to survive. I mean, he was just an extraordinary. They had a wire, like radio transmissions can actually go over a wire. Like, they had probably what was originally a telegraph wire, but they couldn't transmit radio waves from, say, Moscow to Siberia. It was just too far and it wouldn't work, but you could run it through this wire, and that's how these people in these outpost towns in Siberia got their news. And the people that ran the camps got their news, not the laborers. But Sam found a magnet and some cardboard and fashioned a speaker, made a working speaker, and ran a wire over to this wire surreptitiously. And they suddenly had, contact with the outside world, and they could hear the news. And all they had to do was disconnect the speaker to turn it off and connect it back up to hear it. So, and he said they never got caught. It was, they had this for years, and it was like it was not a problem. As I say, I could talk about Sam for a long time, but I'm sorry?
Seders.
Oh, yeah, that's a story. That's a really important story. Thank you for reminding me of that. Sam had 2 seders every year, and he invited between 30 and 40 people to each seder. And he did all the shopping and all the cooking, and he conducted the seders. He did it all himself. He started, months in advance. He was very excited about this. He started months in advance preparing for this. I mean, this was, something that the whole neighborhood looked forward to. And I'm sure there were a lot of Jewish kids that had never seen a real seder, that saw a real seder conducted, in Shmulik's house. And that reminds me. I have this one or two more. I promise I'll quit soon. The rabbi was there at the shiva, and the rabbi was saying he always had to be really careful about quoting. He couldn't bring down Tosfos, or he couldn't bring down a Rashi. If Sam was there, Sam would very often say, "That's not the way I remember it." So you had to be really careful when Sam was around. And Sam had a study partner, and they would be studying Torah, and they would get into disagreements, and so Sam would often bring down Rashis. But Sam would also occasionally bring down a Rashi that he made up that was, to support his point of view. And his study partner, finally got wise to this, figured out what was going on, and then, he said, well, I too can play this game. So they both tried. They both started bringing down lots and lots of Rashis in their studies, but to try to sneak one made up one in at some point. I don't think his partner ever got one by on him, though. It was pretty hard to get anything by on Sam. Anyway, the next door neighbors, who were very close friends, the wife told me that once Sam came in there and he started trying to clear his throat, and she said, "Oh, look, can I get you a glass of water?" And Sam said, "Well, maybe something a little stronger." And so they broke out the vodka. The next door neighbors were very bright people, so the next time Sam came and started clearing his throat, the vodka came out right away. And so I think it's appropriate that I close today with perhaps a drink. And I hope all of you have something that you can share in this toast. This is to the memory of Shmulik. I don't know if the angels have any machines or tools or anything, but if they do, I am sure that Shmulik is up there fixing and improving them right now. To Shmulik, in memory of Shmulik. Oh,